yes, like I want my music to be great, but like my main objective is to serve the story, support the vision. And that's what's the difference between like a film composer and a composer. It's like we're there to help, we're there to serve. And whenever I feel that I can support the director's vision or the purpose of it, I feel like I've done my job.
Welcome to the podcast today. Our special guest is Joy Ngiaw, and you are from Malaysia, but you're living in LA. And Joy recently, well, just over the past few years, you've had some really great successes with getting music done in TV and film. I know you've got an award you've got for an Apple TV or Apple TV Plus. You won some awards on that. And you've got a Netflix series that you've been doing as well, which is awesome. But welcome and Joy. Let's dive in and tell us a little bit about where you came from. How did you get started on music, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked. Well, I was born in a village in West Malaysia and was brought up in China, but and was really blessed that my parents were always so encouraging for me and my siblings to explore our creativity. So we did we took some piano lessons, we did dance lessons, painting lessons, just anything that kind of extra curriculum, I guess, for us to just test the waters. And I grew up playing classical piano. I loved it, and I stuck with it, and started playing in school orchestras, and soon was able to play for the New Shanghai Orchestra in high school. And I just love playing in an orchestra with like collaborating with people and hearing all the different instruments come together, and started paying attention to movie scores because I just love how film scores like affect your experience when you're watching a film and help tell the story. So I decided to pursue that passion and went to Berklee College of Music in 2012. And since I graduated, I've been here and just hustling in this film industry.
Awesome. So in order to get come from China essentially and get to Berklee, that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, that's not something that every kid grows up and think, I'm going to end up at Berklee Music School. So you must be really good on the piano or have some really great talents in a lot of instruments then, right?
I was really good at classical piano, but as you know, as the piano player yourself, it takes a lot of practice. So I'm definitely out of practice in the classical piano world, but it's definitely an instrument that I always gravitate towards too. It feels like home to me, and I use that a lot in my compositions.
Got it. So I'm just curious, as you were growing up, because I came up through the classical world as well, where you learned how to play Beethoven, Rachmaninoff, all these things the way that somebody decided that was how it was supposed to be played, with all the technical stuff. And as I got into college and started really improvising, I was never really taught to improvise. And I think that was, I'm just curious if that was kind of your experience as well, of not really being encouraged to understand what's actually going on behind the music versus just playing what's on the page.
That was actually, because you hit it right, nail it down. Because like when we're practicing, it's like, okay, we practice the scales, we do all these repertoire. And I started improvising actually because of film music. Like I just started to pay attention to the score, like, oh, there's music playing in the background when you watch film, especially those like childhood animation. I grew up watching Disney Pixar films, and that kind of, I was so curious about it, like why, and let me just try it out. So I started to like improvise on the piano by myself for fun, just whatever I was feeling at the moment. Like I remember in high school, I would sneak into the auditorium where there's like a grand piano there, and I just play whatever, like with no scores. And that was the first experience. It's quite freeing, like not following any book, and I just realized I love that more. I really love expressing myself and being connected to my emotions through music. So it's definitely something that triggered my interest in composition.
And people ask me often, how is it that you can somehow play, without the music? Because again, I would say almost 95% of people who play piano came up through that.
Yeah.
Here's a note, here you're going to play what's written, and it's just this foreign idea to them to be able to sit down and all of a sudden play. And the best way I've found to explain that to people is, say, hey, you can sing a song, right? So anybody can sing a tune. Well, how did you learn how to do that? Well, I don't know. You just kind of do it. And it's the same way with, I think, the fingers a little bit is, if you do it enough times, all of a sudden you start teaching your fingers how to sing up and down the keyboard the same way that the voice does it, only you get all 88 keys, which is awesome to have that range.
Yeah, actually something that really inspires me when I was improvising on the piano is a feeling of nostalgia. It's because I was born in Malaysia, but I studied in China, so there was always a longing. I think as a child I was sensitive, and there was always a longing of home. I miss home, I miss my family, I miss my roots back in Malaysia, and I never really know how to express that till I started playing things on the piano, and it was quite somber, but it was just my way of like feeling connected to home, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really a therapeutic process. And I remember a music teacher walk in, he's like, you should try writing music, like you should try composing, because I didn't know what that was. I just thought I want to express my feeling of nostalgia, my longing for home through piano. I didn't even know I was doing that till someone pointed out to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's so special that music makes you connect.
And I think there's a couple moments as I look back when I was playing piano. I was not the model student like you probably were, where you probably practiced. I had a mom that had to ride me and force me to practice. And I would be so much better had I actually practiced more than I did. But in Utah, where I'm at, there's a Gina Bachauer competition for piano that's really, really famous, and they bring people in from all over the world to come into that. And I remember, and I honestly don't even remember who told this to me, but one of the teachers that was at the competition, she always would take students. I was never good enough to even like pretend like I could compete there, but she came back and she said, I had this one of the students and it was from China, had played this piece just perfectly. I mean, just nailed it, which is awesome. And she said that the judge did something that she'd never seen anybody else do. I mean, usually they just are quiet and they don't really say a lot, but she actually stopped her and said, I want you to visualize clouds as you play this now. And the student, and this is in my lesson, she was explaining, this student had the hardest time to be able to connect the idea of feelings or like this visual nostalgia, that whatever it might be, this beautiful thing with the music that was just so technical and rigid that, they'd gotten the technical down, but it's almost like taking a computer and saying, AI, go play this, but now play it with feeling.
Yeah, freestyle it.
And it's one of those, I mean, I really think that's what film and TV do, is it creates this feeling. And for me, I was the same way. It just made it magical to be able to put the emotion and feeling into that. And I don't know, I think that's why I've gravitated to the kind of that type of music for my whole life. As I started playing, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, it's a huge influence of mine is composer Joe Hisashi. Like same as that feeling that you were describing, where I just love the complexity of emotions in his music, where he's not afraid to kind of dive into this. When I listen to it, it feels like it's in between emotion. I don't know. It's not like this is happy, this is sad. It's like it lives in that in between, and it's so beautiful. I really gravitate towards music like that evokes that kind of thought-provoking feeling. So
but one of since you were a classical piano, I don't usually have classical pianists on here, I get to talk stuff. So one of my things with classical piano that I always found as a student is that sometimes would feel like there was too much going on. And I think part of it is there would be, maybe that was the idea, as the orchestra would be playing all these different things, but when you're on the piano and you have all these chords and notes, sometimes I feel like the beauty, it can get lost really quickly when you get too crazy. And I'm just curious, with you talked about kind of the simplicity and beauty. Yeah. How do you dial in on the simple and not overdo too many chords and too much stuff going on?
With classical piano, I really I think that's why I was gravitating towards like impressionistic piano music, like Debussy or Ravel, because I feel like it's so it gives you the freedom to kind of we're playing the notes on the piano, but like whenever I feel like it's more space for us to express. It's just so fluid, and I feel that it's a bit more flexible with not much rules. At least that's how I approached it. Maybe my piano teacher when I was younger might say otherwise, but that's the feeling that I get to me. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I am more drawn to impressionistic piano compositions where I feel like there's a little bit more space, and space is encouraged. And actually, wasn't Debussy the one that said music is the silence between notes as well? Again, so beautiful and resonated to me so well. And yeah, it's funny. It's just whatever works with people, right? Like everyone's drawn to different music, but I guess my realm, I really was drawn to that.
Yeah. I remember back, and I don't know if this ever happened to you, where I'd be playing a Beethoven, and this happened probably the worst on Rachmaninoff. And I think the reason it probably happened to me, I would change some of the music. So
really?
So much going on. I was doing a prelude on G minor. I mean, it was just all over the place. And I'd get to the middle, and it'd be this kind of up and down. And I would find myself feeling like, well, you should have gone here. And I had a teacher tell me, and I think they were jokingly telling this, is that dead composers will come back and haunt you if they change.
Really? Oh
no. But it was one of those where I felt like, well, gosh, if Beethoven was here, I'd have a conversation with him and say, don't you think it sounds better this way?
Don't you think so? But I mean, isn't that the beauty of it? Like it's so subjective. Like everyone can see a painting and feel differently.
Yeah.
I feel the same with music. Like if someone hear it, there's no rules. Like you have to feel this way when you hear this piece of music. That's not the idea. I feel like hopefully the ghost of Beethoven will agree.
Well, and as you and I think for musicians out there, I think having that ability to be told, hey, if you want to change a little bit of Beethoven and it makes you feel good, okay, maybe you got to pass your song off or pass your test for get a grade in school, but most of the time, who are you playing the piano for or the music for? It's for you. Yeah. So make it your own. And I guess the only place you run into trouble with that is if you want to re-record it and then have licensing issues, I guess, if you're publishing. But even then, with the way covers work these days, it's pretty easy to get permissions and do a mashup of Taylor Swift and Beethoven, I guess, if you really wanted to, right?
Yeah. And it's unique. I mean, we don't want to hear the same performance, the same expression of this piece of music. Like I love hearing other people's covers of different things and make it their own. Like it's so interesting. That's the beauty of it.
It's what makes it fun. Well, so let's talk about your experience with coming to the United States and going to music school. I mean, was that just, you were probably just barely out of high school and scared to death, right? So talk some of that.
I was 17. I was super young. I loved it. I mean, I really found my community. I think in China, maybe I didn't quite find that community yet, but I've definitely found that at Berklee, especially in the film scoring department. I always tell, we're still, keep in contact today. I have such a close group of friends that are also in this film industry. And I always say, like, I feel like we found our people just because everyone is so passionate about not just film music, but just we're also in tune with our emotions. I think you have to have that sensitivity and expression when you're doing film music. And I just never felt so seen by this community. Like, oh, we all love the same thing. We all love movies, and we express ourselves differently. But that's so cool. It's celebrated. Like the sensitivity and being emotional was celebrated, and I just feel so grateful to even have that experience. I think it really encouraged me to kind of come out of my introverted shell and just embrace being emotional, because it helps me write music. It helps me connect with others, and that's what makes my music. I feel that I can serve the story better because I understand people and I'm interested in people. I love connecting with people.
So with your music side, was there a moment where you feel like all of a sudden everything kind of clicked together and you felt like, okay, now I really, where you got that confidence to be able to move forward and that you could do this?
In school, there was lots of great, mentors and teachers that really encouraged me. I think what was really motivating to me was in Berklee, there was this class that only 8 students get selected, and it's to score a silent film. It's like kind of like a very intensive class that is like an extra credit thing, but you really work closely with the teacher. And I feel like that class really propelled me in storytelling because it felt like working with a director, because he was like telling us how to score to a silent film, no dialogue, and that's music really has to tell the story. And I feel like I did like a very extensive master class in that one, and we got to score to Nosferatu, that silent film, and they performed it actually at the Boston Symphony Orchestra with the Boston Pops, which is
Very cool.
insane. As
That's
a
awesome.
student, it was really insane to hear a professional orchestra play your music to picture. So I think that really gave me the confidence. Like, this is so fun. Like, I want to keep doing this. Like, this, it just enriches my life a lot.
Yeah. So if you could rewind the clock back and have a conversation with yourself, that 17-year-old you, or another student let's say you're back in Berklee, given a kind of here's what I wish I would have known, what advice would you have for those individuals?
Different in different stage. I think to my really younger self, like teenager self, maybe I would encourage her to embrace being emotional, because especially in the Asian culture before then, coming from a traditional family, being emotional wasn't really celebrated. We were more like, okay, we don't express emotions. And I always thought being very sensitive or being emotional was not a great thing and made me not fit in. But I would really encourage my younger self to not be afraid of that, because it becomes a tool actually to connect with others. And I just full on embrace it. It really does make my life as a composer, but also a human, to be more, enriched. So that would be my advice for that younger self. And in terms of Berklee, career advice is I would say just move here, or just try to seek out opportunities to work in the music team of other composers and working in the industry, because I really found that super valuable to kind of being mentored and working in the shadows of people who are already in the industry, because I feel like that's where I learned so much by being here and helping out.
Yeah. So you talk about this music team, and I think this is especially for those younger people in music. We have this picture in our mind that there's, they're a rock star on the stage. Maybe there's somebody pushing the lights on the board back at the concert, and there's, and then there's the recording artists, I guess. But there's what you talked about, the team. So maybe share some of these other opportunities that a lot of people don't realize even exist, that you found when you got to, came to the States and were at Berklee.
Yeah, so through the Berklee Alumni Network, I was able to apply for internships here in LA prior moving to Los Angeles. And I started an internship with TV composer Jeff Russo. So I was intern, and then I became an assistant for him, and that for a year. And that was such a valuable experience, because I really truly saw how an actual working TV composer works in the industry. You definitely need a team. But I feel like I didn't learn those things at Berklee, because these are like real life experiences that I think are really valuable, that helps my career in the future, because I learned so much of how he conducts himself, with clients, or how he writes and how he manages so many TV schedule, so many projects, attending recording sessions and seeing how the conductor conducts the orchestra, how does the studio managers work. Like, it was so much. It's such an educational process to just be there and observe. There's so many different jobs in this, because it takes a whole team to deliver a score. And that was so valuable. So after I assisted Jeff, I went on to assist another composer who's a documentary composer. Then I get to learn that side of the world. So I just think being part of a music team and helping, I learned that there's so many different positions that you can help, whether it's music editing or score prep or like orchestration, being an assistant, a score mixer. There's just so many opportunity, additional writer. There's no one path, I think, to start working in LA. I think the only path is really just exert yourself in as much different experiences as possible, and you would start to find what you're good at and what you're more interested in, and then start going there. But I wouldn't have known that unless I was here and just trying different things, you know.
Mm-hmm. So in finding that team, you say there's all these opportunities. I run across artists all the time, and they're really talented and they've recorded great things, but they struggle to kind of get, figure out how to open that first door or second door that then leads to those opportunities. What do you suggest for people that say, somebody that says, hey, I want to be a movie composer, how do you find that first door? I mean, do you just send a whole bunch of emails to your favorite composers and hope in a prayer and or what do you recommend for opening those doors to start?
So while I was assisting these composers, I still kept going, doing my own. I still knew my end goal was to be my own composer. So while I was assisting during my day job, I also made an effort to show up at like film festivals or go see a concert or just attending events, because that's for me working on my career, which is like start making connections with up and coming directors and indie directors. And just even though if I don't have a film, I'll still go see and watch and then start talking to people. That's really how I got my first start in having my own projects, is because I show up at these events and then I randomly met someone who I connected really well with, and they happen to have a new short film they want to get scored, and that's how they would find me, kind of thing. So I did that a lot. Like while I was assisting composers, like I made sure to still have time to also work on, my own music. And that was really my experience, because at Berklee, I didn't score, other people's. I didn't have that experience of like working on someone else's film. And that just started accumulating. And soon enough, I felt really comfortable to kind of be on my, like not assist anymore and just be on my own, because if you do like a good job on one, they will recommend you to someone else, and the circle just keeps getting wider. I think if you're working hard and you're putting in your all, I think it does start growing. So there's really no one path. That's how I came about. But I also know people who didn't assist; they just went straight to freelance, or some other composers will work as a composer assistant for a long time, and then they get promoted to additional writers, and then soon they get promoted to co-writers. So there's really no one path. That's just what worked for me. But that's the beauty of it. There's just so many different ways.
One of the things a couple of things I'm hearing from you though is that you continue to work on your own stuff. And
yes.
So my guess is you probably worked a hard, long day at your normal job, and then you went home and you worked on your own stuff for fun, and it was, a lot of people want to go, punch out at their job, and then they're like, I don't have time to do it if I, and have this dream of, well, if I could just spend full time on it. I think the key is learning to, you'll realize if you really love the music and that's what you want to do in your spare time. I think that's a big clue for people.
And it's a balance too, for sure. It's a balance.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, to balance all this, and while having a life and having personal life as well.
And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is that you would proactively seek out film festivals and going to concerts. And my guess is you didn't just go sit there on the back row or in the middle, wherever your seat was, and just maybe sometimes you enjoyed the concert, but you probably would at least talk to the person next to you and introduce yourself and be friendly. And I see so many opportunities. Airplanes are the perfect example.
That's true. And you have plenty of opportunities.
You get on that airplane seat, and it drives my wife crazy. Where I'll be that friendly guy that can talk your ear off. If I've tried to learn. Okay, they don't want to talk very much; they just stick their headphones on. But you can meet some of the most interesting people on airplanes or at concerts.
That's true.
They may not be a music composer, but my guess is they probably know somebody or they've got some cool life experience. And I think connecting, not only like the emotional level that you said be more emotionally there, but I think just connecting with human beings and being open to their stories. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of times there's opportunities put in our path, and sometimes we take advantage of them, and other times they might be sitting right next to you on the airplane, and you never took the time to just say, hey, I'm Joy, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really think it's just to be curious, because I genuinely am curious. Like when I go to the film festivals and I see a film that intrigues me, I want to know like what inspired you, like why did you want to tell this story? And I think if you show people you're actually interested, like they will want to talk to you. And I mean, it's a very organic thing. It's I realize it can't be forced to. Like, of course, like
Right.
sometimes I'll go to events and I'm like, oh, I can't connect to anyone, and that's okay. Like it's so I just kind of went at it at my own pace, and whatever worked for me, I think I was comfortable with, and I didn't force anything to happen. I just kind of organically happened. And those to me are the best collaborations, because you really do just align on a creative vision.
Mm-hmm.
And then magic happens, because then you work with other people, and I really love that. I love writing music, but I also really love working with people and really am curious about their story.
Yeah, that's great. You said something I think is really important. I just want to bring it up again. Is you said you were there and you were interested in them.
Yes.
And I think that right there is one of the, if you think about being a composer, it's not, I mean, for scoring that film, yes, you're part of that process, but a lot of times when you're scoring a film, it's not about you.
Mhm.
It's about that director, and it's about their vision they had.
Yes.
And I think a good composer, or somebody who's doing a really good music supervisor, same thing. They're going to pay attention to what's important to the film and to that director, to capture that vision. And when it clicks, just like you said, it clicks. But if you genuinely don't care and you aren't interested, it's going to be really, really hard to
Yeah.
score a film if you hate the subject, or you hate the show in general. I mean, you could be doing a whole lot of other things that you'd be interested in, and you do a whole lot better job with than.
Yeah, it's we're there to serve the story. That's the most important thing. Like, yes, like I want my music to be great, but like I also, my main objective is to serve the story, support the vision, and that's what's the difference between like a film composer and a composer. It's like we're there to help, we're there to serve. And whenever I feel that I can support the director's vision or the purpose of it, I feel like I've done my job.
So, and from observing a lot of different situations over the years, I think for a composer, composers get inspiration, and that's great. But when they get aligned with a cool project, it maybe introduces them to a whole nother set of characters or world that they would have never even dreamed up. And now all of a sudden, when you merge the composer with that other vision and the dream, all of a sudden it just takes you in this whole nother cool direction that neither one probably ever would have found without an opportunity.
Exactly. Everyone brings their strengths to the table. Like it's not just the composers, the directors, the writers, the actors, like everyone, colorists, everybody brings something. And then in the end, that product is born. It's so cool. Like that collaboration process is so much fun to support. Everyone just wants to support the film.
Yeah. Well, and I think for any movie buff out there, even if you're not into music, I think if you pay attention to who those composers are, I mean, Hans Zimmer is a perfect example. He's worked on so many different projects, but his music it varies across a whole ton of spectrums, which is really cool. But my guess is without those opportunities to say, hey, we're going to do this show Interstellar in space and have, and then we're going to do Gladiator, and you're going to have, we're going to rewind the clock hundreds of years, and we've got to capture those different types. I think as composers, sometimes we get stuck in our, here's our zone where we're comfortable. And I think the beauty of the film and TV is it brings in a wider idea for your music sometimes that you otherwise wouldn't get if you were just, going to your piano every day to write music.
Yeah, I mean that is the beauty of working as a composer, is you get to work in so many different genres, because everyone has a unique story to tell. So then, and there's no limits to that. You can work on a live action, a video game, an animation, and so many different genres. And you get to put on different hats every day. And I'm just really grateful to be able to do this as a living.
But, and so you've done several projects with people. So once you get the person that says, "Hey, I want you to help me with my documentary or with my film,"
Yeah.
what are some of the tips, I guess, you'd have for anybody who's out? Maybe they're an established veteran or somebody doing it their first time. What are some of those tricks that you've learned that help that process go a little better? Does it sit down with the person? Is there a lot of Zoom calls? Is it meetings, emails? How do you do that to be the most successful?
Yeah, I mean, I really love the initial meet and greet with the filmmakers because I really want to understand, like what we all talked, like we were talking about, to be curious. I'm so curious, like, why did you do this story? What was your inspirations behind it? Who are these characters? What message do you want the audience to receive through your film? And those conversations are really important to me because it acts as like a backbone on why we're doing this. I like to find out the why. And then from there, I can start building a sound palette in my head, like what would be suitable for this project, and start writing character themes or film themes, and that start the conversation there before even scoring to picture. I will always start writing themes first, and then have those conversations based on those themes. Like, what do you think about this? Is this, do you think this represents your film well? And once we have solidified that musical palette, then when we're starting to score the film, we already have such a strong foundation built. But that's all built based on finding out the why for all the filmmakers and really understanding the core, the soul of the story. And that to me, that helps a lot.
So when you talk about the sound palette, is it several existing recordings to find out what flavors so it sounds to me a little bit like you're the chef in this kitchen and you've got all these ingredients and you're going to narrow it down and say, okay, we're going to do lemon herb chicken.
Yeah.
and that way you're not going out and doing a whole bunch of sushi with the chicken that's going to make completely, both are good, but don't necessarily play well together.
For me, when I say sound palette, it's more like orchestration, melodies, and harmonies. Like I would start, for example, this project I've done is called Blush on Apple TV. It's an animation. So first, I understand the story. The story is about it's a tribute to my director's late wife who died of breast cancer, and the theme of this film was how family was like oxygen. So when he said that, it kind of inspired me to, oh, oxygen. So that's air. Like, what if I add some of like vocal textures to it to signify that? And okay, he's talking about air, then that means I can feature some woodwinds because that's wind instruments, air instruments. Okay, it's about family. To me, family feels like a piano because it feels like home to me. We want strings, so we want heartwarming things. So then I start building these ideas before I even start writing. I had those ideas in my head already based on that conversation. And then I'll really, really think about what the characters are feeling, and then I'll start composing maybe the initial theme. And then I'll send that theme to the director, and then they can give me feedback, what they think. And I was really happy that the idea of like adding vocal breaths to that sound palette really resonated with our director. And then we used that intentionally. Like, okay, when the astronaut's in love, that's when his breath is here. So we have that. But when the alien kind of when she goes away, then the breath is taken away. And then it comes back again when he's moving on and has hope. Stuff like that. It's just like everything is like very intentional. And I love just evolving my musical palette based on projects.
Yeah. But it sounds like almost like the video game where they put little Easter eggs, or even in movies all over the place. You know, and the music's the same way. I think that probably happens more than most people ever even realize.
Everything's with intention.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Cool. Wow. So I'm just curious. So you talked a little bit about getting with the director. So have you worked with music supervisors? I know there's a lot of these music supervisors that, you know, independent artists I know are becoming more and more aware of the supervisors and trying to get music pitched to them. I'm curious what your experience has been with that world, and have you got any tips for those independent artists that maybe that aren't necessarily composers, but would still like to get music into film or TV?
Oh, as a songwriter.
Yeah, these songwriters that are, you know, not necessarily scoring the full songs. Have you seen, especially where you're working on these documentaries and other things, I'm sure you've crossed paths with a lot of supervisors and just opportunities where you need to get maybe you're not a bluegrass type of, musician, but you need somebody. So would it be helpful sometimes for the composer to have artists that are doing other things that maybe you're not good at, reach out to you, and what do you suggest for those individuals?
Yeah, the music supervisors they're such a great resource. They're so, such a wealth of knowledge in the musical world. And like you said, it's like they have the genre is just so wide, right? And that their job is to put together also in their way a sound palette for the film to present to directors. What do you think of these songs? Is this the vibe? And these are some artists that maybe and present those ideas to the director first and see what they feel about that and create different scenarios, right? In terms of pitching to music supervisors, I do have an agent, so they do pitch me to music supervisors. So I'm not quite sure how that would go for other artists.
Got it. Well, and I think, the agent's a whole nother kind of angle that I think a lot of people maybe should consider. I mean, what would you say a good agent does for a composer like yourself?
A good agent. I was really lucky. I found my agent after Blush came out, they found me. So a common advice that I've heard in the industry is always, at least for film composers, is agents will find you when they're ready because they need something to sell on. Like you need to have a very unique musical voice for someone to be able to talk about you and present to clients. And what my agents have done for me is they set me up with meetings. Like that's the best part, where they set me up with, music executives, music supervisors, or if there's any film that I watch and I'm really inspired by, I'll be like, oh, I like this film, and this is the kind of projects I'm drawn towards. And they will try to kind of piece the puzzle together, like who can she meet? And maybe let's plant some seeds there. So they've been a great resource to me, but I didn't have an agent for a very long time, like when I was scoring my indie films. And that's okay. I think it's just keep working on your art, just keep expanding your repertoire, keep collaborating. And soon I think when there's a film that catches the agent's attention, they will come find you.
Got it. So the key is keep writing music and doing you and doing it your way, so that means that you love it. But I think when the opportunity comes, if you've got 100 or 300 or 1,000 songs in your repertoire, that's going to be a whole lot better than if you've done a dozen songs and have done one album. You're probably not ready for an agent, right?
Exactly. Like you have to be ready to have an agent. But I for a long time, I didn't, maybe 5 years or so. I was just doing my own films. And like you said, it's because I love it and wasn't expecting much. So I definitely feel very fortunate.
Yeah. So last question for you. So what is the best, maybe you got two answers to this too. What's the best advice you've been given that you like kind of comes to mind when it comes to the music business and music career that you've taken?
For composition, the best advice I've had is to score with intention. Like, because there was a time where, especially when I was working on Blush, what I learned so much from the filmmakers is like, why did you add this instrument? Or like, why did you write the storyline? Is it serving the story, or is it an extra thing? And I realized that, like, yeah, that's true. Sometimes if I get stuck in writing music, I really just think back, like, okay, what is the music supposed to say now in terms of the story? Like, what are our characters feeling? And that was such a valuable lesson I took from scoring that project. And in terms of industry, I think it's just find your community. Like, there's just so many different people here in this industry, and not all will work, and that's okay, because there's always people that you will get connected with and that you resonate with, that you guys align on your creative vision. And just don't be afraid to explore that, to meet people and fail and maybe succeed in some, but you have to just do it to have that experience to move forward, I believe.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Joy, I know we've gone way over time. It's been an awesome conversation. I've loved chatting with you.
This is so much fun. It's like talking to your friend.
we should do this more often. We should do another one. I'd love to dive into some of the music and really even show some examples maybe on a future podcast. So we should for sure reconnect again. But if people want to go check out some of your music and listen to the things you've done, where should they go to find you?
I have my website is Joy Ngiaw. Ngiaw is spelled Ngiaw, and all my social handles are my name as well, so you can stay updated through that.
Awesome. And we're going to post all of the links right into the podcast notes. So if you're listening to this in your car, you can go home and you can click and go check it out. But you've got some amazing music, Joy. I really have been impressed with, I listen to a lot of music and you've got some great stuff. So well done. Keep it up.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I really feel like we're having just a coffee and hanging out today.
That's the point. This has been great. Hopefully I have no doubt that some of the value ideas and bombs that you dropped today are going to help some people in their future. So thank you so much for being so giving of your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.